Alright, so for our presentation, we had the task of doing the arts, theater, and culture of the Elizabethan era. So,
Here, we'll get started. So, for the Elizabethan theater, we have the popular playwriters, including William Shakespeare's, and James Burbage, which is also Richard Burbage's father, I think. And if Burbage wasn't murdered to death in a bar fight, they say he would have rivaled Shakespeare. Shakespeare died in 1612, I think, and was born in 1564. Oh, wow. The Globe Theatre is a theatre in England that was built in for Shakespeare and with Shakespeare's crew in 60 in wait here, give me a second. Lost my notes. In 1599, and it was destroyed by fire on the 29th of June of 1613. Amelie, it's your turn.
yeah. Okay, for popular actors, we have James Burbage's son, Richard Burbage, who I guess like father like son, taking both career paths in the theater industry. There are also Edward Allen. There weren't really many popular actors because acting was more of a thing. I've seen the book. It's not like acting was that big of a thing. So basically, all I have to say for that.
There you go.
For food, they didn't really have staple food back then either. Food was just whatever you could eat. It was mostly just dishes with meat and potatoes, which is kind of disgusting, but kind of delicious sounding at the same time. And not only that, but they didn't drink water back then as much as we do now because their water system, their rivers were always extremely polluted with human and animal feces. Because there weren't any sewers. You couldn't it couldn't do anything with the poop except for dump it into the river. The only way that you would get water would be through the well, and no one really put their feces in the well because it's where one would drink out of. But instead of drinking water, they mostly drank alcohol and milk. For fashion, you think that modern fashion was really weird? Those guys were even weirder. They had these things called ruffs. It was started by Queen Elizabeth, this trend, and basically the rich and fancy people would wear these kind of crimped collars, as you can see in that photo. And started getting kind of ridiculous, being several feet in diameter and just going everywhere. And it was extremely stupid looking. They sometimes would knock things over. Not only that, but women also wanted to look thin, have a really tiny waist. So they'd wear these things that would tighten and make their waist look smaller. It's kind of like a belt. And they put it so tight that there are actual couches called fainting couches because women would not be able to breathe. So then they would faint due to lack of oxygen. And then they'd fall on those couches. That's quite a lot in order to look pretty. Women mostly wore skirts. Women wearing pants wasn't. It was not a thing. That didn't happen. Rich men wore basically like pretty much king's prince clothes that you see in your TV shows, and they also wore nylons and what looked like tap dancing shoes. but they aren't. They're just normal shoes to them, and it's basically it for the fashion. For the sports of the era, they didn't really have, once again, staple sports. It wasn't like back in medieval times when there was jousting and a whole bunch of cool stuff like that fights to the death. Nope, it was not like that. Sports weren't really played by people in rural areas. The sports that they did play were basically way more brutal, and sure you had the occasional children playing tag during recess at school, but for the rich mostly played sports. For example, like golf, an earlier form of badminton, maybe some bowling, and they also really loved archery. They loved it. They would it was basically the staple sport of the time.
For the popular painters of the era, there was George Gower and Robert Peake the Elder. They were both popular painters for Queen Elizabeth, and most of their paintings were of her. And that's pretty much all that I have to say on them because I don't have that much information. But here, popular books, there were Christopher Marlowe books, um, like this one, Dr. Faustus. Um, yeah, wow.
There
I
was
have
more
no information here.
books, but okay.
More books?
Yes, there were more books. There was also the Fairy Queen and different. There's more than that.
Okay.
Well then, for music, basically it was classical music that was called. It wasn't called classical music. It was called music. And the popular music composers were really William Byrd, John Downland, and John Farmer. There were a lot of Johns, and Thomas Champion, just quite an arrogant name if I do say so myself. They both they weren't names that people would remember throughout history because it's not like we I didn't know these people, so I don't know what they had composed, but it seems as though they had composed stuff, but it's not like they went back through time. They were just the things of that era. They were just the most popular ones. Sure, they wrote some secluded symphony back in the day that no one remembers now. That's basically it. I hope you guys enjoyed our presentation.
Thanks for watching.